Cloud and Clear, the podcast by SADA for innovative business leaders and technology enthusiasts, where we explore how Google Cloud is transforming the industry and what that means to you. Now here's your host, Tony Safoyan.
Well, welcome everybody to another Cloud and Clear episode, this time work from home edition. I have and am very excited to have a very special guest, somebody that I actually am more excited about than most, given his background and his passion and what he does, and that's Jason Martin, Global VP of Google Professional Services at Google. Welcome, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. I'm super excited to be with you. I guess it was, 6 months ago about when I saw you down in Burbank.
Yeah.
Now a lot's changed since then, but looking forward to spending some time with you here.
Yeah, the world was very different in January. Jason, you're referring to, we had the great privilege of having you come join us at our SADA All Hands, where we bring everybody together into SoCal, and we kind of spend a week talking about things. I remember you were so kind enough. I think if memory serves, it was even your wife's birthday, right?
It was indeed. Yeah, it was spot on that day, I think. And so she came down. And we stayed up in Hollywood Hills at a nice little boutique hotel that a friend recommended, and it wasn't too far from Burbank, even with the traffic.
Oh, well, my heart goes out to her. She's a good woman. We appreciate it. You actually spent, for the audience, you spent a lot of time talking to our 250 folks about generally what the world of Google PSO is doing. We'll probably talk some similar things today, but it was great for my collective team to learn more about how to become a really great professional services organization. And we learned so much from you. And one of the reasons why
to be honest, vice versa, because we've been on this journey together, I think, from the early, I think SADA and Tony was one of the first partners I met when I joined just over 4 years ago. So it's been an incredible journey with SADA and my time at Google together. So we've learned from each other.
We do. That's a great part of our special relationship. I'm particularly excited. The reason why I'm sitting in the Johnny Carson chair, I kind of feel like Ed McMahon, or I guess it's Jay Leno before he got the Tonight Show. I'm sitting in the chair today because I have this passion. I have an affinity for professional services, largely because that's kind of how I've come up through the ranks over the 20 plus years. And I know you have too. And, someone once told me, I have a mentor, his name is John O'Melia. He's the CEO of Seal Software, which just recently got acquired from DocuSign. He mentioned, something to me earlier on saying, hey, professional services is not for the faint of heart. It's hard. And that's why I love doing it. And it always gives challenges. It's always the thing that, iron sharpening iron with customers and doing new things all the time, constantly getting in new challenges. And it's always just been something that I've just absolutely loved. And I know you share the same affinity. But
absolutely. Yeah, no, I've been in services from my first formal job, essentially, after school. So it's been quite an evolution.
Tell me about that. I mean, Jason, so I've been following you for a long time, and I've kind of been seeing kind of your career projection by looking at all the things that you've done over the years. It looks to me like you're a fellow Pac-12 graduate of university out of Stanford, and very impressive. I'd love to know generally how you got into this business. What's your story? How did it evolve?
Well, I suppose if you go way back, I actually did my freshman year at Stanford, and I actually ran cross country and track for them, which is how I got there. I don't think it certainly wasn't all academics. And I took a CS class and learned how to code in Pascal, and I went home over the summer and wrote a video store check-in, check-out system for our local video store. And no one told me at the time that you need to think about support and long-term maintenance. So I just, thought I had this awesome deal where they paid me, I don't know, $500, and all the movies I ever could want for my entire life. And I wrote the program pretty quickly, deployed it to them. This is after one semester of Pascal. So I hadn't learned linked list yet. So I'm like, well, how many movies could they ever have? Let's just do a big array of 3,000, And because I wasn't thinking about the maintenance, I delivered it to them. And then it just became this, like, every time I walked in to get a movie, I had to do some kind of feature update or bug fix. And eventually got to where I would just like to get to the post office, I'd crawl under, their windows so they wouldn't see me, because I didn't want to get pulled in to do more maintenance. So
Right.
so much for the free videos. But then fast forward a couple of years, a mentor of mine said to me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And they said, well, if you don't know what you want to do, go be a consultant, because they can kind of do everything.
Right.
And so that's how I joined, at the time, Anderson Consulting, now obviously called Accenture. And then after 4.5 years there, made the transition to ad tech. Actually, I was at a startup called Net Gravity, which ironically IPO'd, and we got bought by our biggest competitor, which is DoubleClick. And when I joined Google in 2016, I was like, well, what do you mean DoubleClick's still around? I did that like a whole career ago. So I was doing ad tech. Oh, and I also studied AI undergrad. So I was an AI major at Stanford.
Oh, wow.
Took classes from, John McCarthy, who invented the Lisp and coined the term AI, and Feigenbaum, who invented expert systems. And I got out and joined Anderson, and it's like there's no business in AI. Like, I didn't even, all the things I learned, which wasn't much because it was just undergrad. There's no way to deploy into that at work. I think I was like high-fiving somebody on one of my projects where I actually got to, do recursion. Like, that was an advanced thing, right? But doing expert systems or any kind of machine learning back then, it was more academic. Like, that just didn't happen. So,
But don't you learn? I always tell people that have started in that big 5, 6, 4, whatever it is, it's an amazing training ground. Like, you learn quite a bit of things.
Well,
you may not always get to work on some of the things that are your passion, but some of the accounts you get thrown into, and the way to kind of, adopt methodology and consistency and standards. It's an exceptional thing for someone's coming out of school.
Absolutely. I think methodology is the thing you hit on that I learned the most, which is like, how do you methodically drive a process that gets you to customer success, that gets you to delivering results at the end? And, the way, Anderson, and I'm sure the others do this as well, I just was more familiar with them. Like, they were so methodical, because they were trying to make sure that fresh grads could actually deliver value very, very quickly. So, that's something I took with me at every company. And I've pretty much always been in services. I had a brief stint in sales at DoubleClick, actually, doing ad tech sales. And literally overnight, I went from being the person that everyone was calling to the person that people didn't return calls. And I was like, what? I'm still the same person. I'm super knowledgeable. Like, why? What? I have to chase them down. So didn't like that much, and went back to the services side. But I'm amazed. I mean, the others, and then after DoubleClick, did VMware, and I'm actually amazed at the parallels between the cloud migration and the virtualization wave. Some of the similarities are that it's obviously a huge cost savings, which, you and I were talking earlier about what that means in a COVID scenario, but it also touches every area of IT, whereas VMware is just compute virtualization. It did touch every layer of IT, measurement and monitoring, capacity planning, change management. Obviously, it touched your storage and network architectures. It pretty much touched everything. But cloud is everything, right? So, seeing a lot of similarities between what happened in the virtualization wave. And I had a very similar role there at VMware that I have at Google, which is running global professional services.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about that. Like, first off, VMware, if you think about some of the companies in history that, completely transformed the way that we think about computing resources in a world that maximizes efficiency and reuse, that was an early pioneer in that world. And you started there very kind of in the heyday of seeing that growth. You started there very early.
Yeah, I think the year I started, they had 10 million in revenue. All desktop, all virtuals, desktop virtualization. ESX 1.0 came out a few months after I joined. And when I left, it was a 10,000 person company with over 2.5 billion in revenue. So, pretty massive growth. It felt like working for 5 different companies through that growth over 8 years. But I mean, the amazing thing is, though, if you look at it, like that was stuff that was being done on the mainframe, virtualization, right? You talk to Mendel Rosenblum, the founder and Stanford, distributed systems professor, who, by the way, taught Larry and Sergey. So there's a lot of connections here, I think. He talked about how he felt like he was doing virtualization at Berkeley and going to all these academic conferences, and then all the academics decided they discovered everything. So it was a dead field. He's like, I became a history major overnight. And then he figured out how to implement it on x86, and that was the new thing. But that's pretty much what we've seen in every wave of technology. It was mainframe to mid-tier to x86, x86 to virtualization, and everything gets reinvented. Like all the other things you need to go do gets reinvented for that new platform. And we're well into that in cloud now. And you think about all the software, the measurement monitoring, the services companies, the whole ecosystem is changing around cloud, just like it did, with those other waves as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you had a professional services leadership role there, which I don't know too much about how VMware's professional services organization was kind of built and what their strategy was, but I think when you were there, it was quite small when you started. That grew pretty extensively as well. Right?
Yeah, I think when I joined, it was me and one trainer and one consultant. So yeah, pretty small. I was the player coach. I literally did the first physical to virtual migrations at GE Industrial Systems in Connecticut, that was with beta software on beta ESX, and I was like, "Is this going to work?" And we migrated 50 NT servers and didn't bat an eye, and it was like worked perfectly, and they were super happy. They saved a ton of money. That was when I realized, it was about 6 months into the job, I realized, wow, this company's going to go somewhere. But when I left, we had 550 people. But the part I was most proud of was actually how we work with the partner community, right? Like, when you're in a technology company, a services organization, your goal is not to grow services, right? I mean, that's not the point of the org. The point of the org is actually to help the core mission, which is the product side. I think we did some very cool things with the channel at VMware, and I know from a services strategy, it's all about like, let's learn first and let's share with everybody. So we were in a very much an open source view on our services IP, which is the same thing we have here at Google Cloud. The quicker we can learn something and get it out, the better off we're going to be. But we also realize all of our partners have knowledge in areas we don't. So how do you make it so they can augment what you've provided? You've got the foundations and basics. So that was kind of the goal there. It's the goal now. I think the difference is, a big project for us there might be $1 million or something. Here it's tens of millions. We've even done some over 100 million now from a services perspective. So it's just a much bigger scale. And as I mentioned before, we're touching every layer of the IT stack from core infrastructure on up to applications, database, AI, machine learning, vertical solutions. So it's obviously much bigger here at Google.
Yeah, it's funny. We've had on this show several times over the last year people that have represented the channel and people that are represented in the partner community, and there has definitely been kind of widespread, unanimous feedback and outward expression of the fact that partners are a big part of the Google ecosystem. I'm probably going to ask you a little bit more about that later, but in every one of the folks that we've talked to from Google that have now very prominent roles, it always seems to have kind of arisen from learnings that have happened over the last 20 years in seeing some of the greatest companies double down, triple down, and expand their footprint and their reach. And the ones that get that right have certainly been the ones that have seen the most amount of success in this new era. And I know that Google has been hiring from the likes of all of these great companies, and it's just a beautiful thing to see that now represented in the very highest levels of Google.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's different about Google than VMware. I mean, VMware, we live in the valley, so it's expensive cost basis, but nothing like Google, right? So, it's hard to make a pure services business work inside of Google, and we won't. And we'd much rather spend our investments on engineering and sales, quite frankly, than we would on services folks. So that's where we absolutely rely on our partners to help grow that. And again, like I said earlier, there's specialty skills that we won't have. Our core focus is our core technology, but to make business value for our customers, they need a much bigger picture than that at the time. So it's vertical knowledge, it's other technologies. So that's where we really rely on the partners. So one of our, like, I always joke, I think you've heard me say it before, like, the name of our org is PSO, Professional Services Organization, super creative. And we call ourselves PSO, and I always joke that the P stands as much for partner as it does professional, right? Because I really do look at a lot of our key metrics are partner attach. I don't want us to be out there working with the customer by ourselves. It only occurs about 10 to 15% of the time. Those are very unique projects and unique clients.
Yeah.
So, we want to make sure we're out there working alongside partners, and that, ultimately the long tail really is coming from the partner, not from us. We're working on the hard new stuff the first time with that client, or with the new product. But then we have some partners like you who can take some of the new products and move faster than us, right? Like the stuff you guys are doing around Anthos is great to see.
Yeah.
And, it's just because we're Google and we're the vendor doesn't mean, you have to get behind us. You can get out in front of us too. We're perfectly happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to talk about it later, but, since you brought it up, as I kind of reflect back in my career and, having looked and worked at places like, Hitachi, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, and the likes, pure services organizations. And I love, and I have great admirations for those pure consulting companies. But, having now taken on my role leading professional services at SADA, and now, you doing that at VMware and Google, professional services in the context of supporting customers, when you have an affiliation and a commitment to the things that are much broader than the individual scope of that particular engagement. And in fact, you're looking at the impact and outcome that makes across the lifetime of that customer's adoption of Google Cloud. I found that it has changed all the rules in which you measure success on a ProServe project. It's changed the types of metrics that you've historically had ingrained in your head in terms of, what are the KPIs that actually produce success. I'm sure you saw a lot of that maybe at VMware, although maybe they tried to extract maybe that more of as a profit center than maybe even Google. But have you seen that? And how does that shape the team's morale and motivation and strategy when they're delivering for a customer?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. First of all, stepping back at a little foundational level, one of the reasons when I made the transition from Accenture to that first startup, NetGravity, and then I've pretty much been in startups since then. Obviously, VMware got pretty darn big when I was there. I did a networking startup, which just got bought by NVIDIA actually a few weeks ago. So that was kind of cool.
Saw that.
Did a storage startup that didn't go anywhere. Up until that point, I thought, every startup's IPO, this is easy. And then I did a storage startup. I'm like, it's not quite easy. But when I made the transition to being on the vendor side, one of the things I felt like was I wasn't a mercenary anymore, right? I stood for something. And actually, that's probably kind of true for SADA as well, because you guys made the decision to go all in on Google. So, you're opinionated. Like you're not a mercenary, right? You actually stand for the technology as well. So you probably have similar attitudes and excitement from your folks as we do, which is you actually have something that you stand for, and there's competition out there against you, right? That has an alternative platform and view on the world from a technology standpoint. So it starts from there. I think that's to me motivational. I think it is for other folks. I think you're spot on in terms of how you look at the long-term customer relationship. It's not VMware, obviously, like many software companies, it's a license model. And VMware even more so is transactional. Like it was even when I was So I was there 8 years. Like I said, we went from, our largest deals being a couple $100,000. I'm not talking PSO. I'm talking software deals, right?
Yeah.
To ELAs that were, $5, $10 million, $20 million. The average transaction size stayed the same that entire time. So it was like $11,000. That was the average transaction size. It was 2 ESX licenses.
Well,
So, very transactional. So that's the difference with Google. We're doing a lot bigger commit deals that are driving multi-year relationships with customers that are really around transforming their business, obviously getting them off of their the albatross of their existing assets and data centers and legacy technologies as quickly as possible to unlock that dollars, but unlock innovation as well. So that changes the nature of the engagement, where you're really thinking long term, and you're much more a part of their team because you're not coming in for just a piece of the technology. It's really transformational. So I think that's motivating. We still do look at utilization, believe it or not. I heard you. I did watch some of your earlier vlogs, and you were saying that was one of the things it was nice for you not to focus on, because of the way you work with your customers at SADA. Don't tell my team that, because they'll be asking me to get rid of our time cards. But it's been, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you say that, Jason. We might record that clip and share that to the rest of the organization. I try not to hound on it, but we do talk about it, and we do track it a little bit.
Okay, it's good to know, because I'm like, wow.
We do track it a little bit.
Okay,
good.
In
fact,
good.
I even have stakeholders that I have to answer to that's very much around that. It's very much a big part of the business. But
it's not how you bill. It's not how you bill, right?
It's not how we bill. It's not how we bill. And just like you, because we're a mirror image of Google. We can run the most successful project with the highest levels of utilization and deliver upon that. But if the output of that engagement 3, 6, 9 months down the road ends up becoming something where it dies on the vine, doesn't get rolled out, doesn't necessarily achieve the outcomes that were required. In the old school, that you would kind of depart, SWAT team out, and you would leave, and you'd leave our customers kind of left holding the bag. Like you, we have multi-year relationships with those customers that with the intent to prove value well above and beyond when that project ends. And so, sometimes, we philosophically believe that, when we need to add more resources, do other things from ProServe to get us to the point where we feel comfortable that our customers are going to receive that value, then, we would happily every single time, sacrifice quote unquote utilization for what we think promotes the bigger brand of both Google and SADA.
That's great to hear. Same. And we definitely, where we need to, we'll over deliver. The only thing really constraining us is accounting, right? Accounting needs to know, what you're delivering, how you're delivering. It's account for value, because you need, especially again, for these bundled deals where you have product and services together, they need to account for the revenue appropriately, like across all the lines. So that's about the only constraint we do have, it feels, is the accounting side. But we really obviously lean in on our customers. I think the flip side's interesting as well. Like, again, at VMware, it was a no-brainer. Like, people bought us. I was actually running a very profitable services business there, because we never discounted. We never gave services away. We had no competition, right? I mean, Hyper-V came out eventually, but it really wasn't competitive. VMware had 8% of the market. We don't have that luxury here at Google Cloud, right? We're the third cloud and racing hard to catch up with the others. So we had to get more creative, and there's more cost pressures and pricing pressures, whatnot, which I didn't honestly face at VMware. But what I have here that I didn't have there was we could actually over deliver on value in amazing ways, right?
Right.
There was more of a cost play. How do you just buy less hardware? There was some upside business benefits, doing DR cheaper, obviously provisioning assets quicker, right? Those had big business benefits, but nothing like going in and talk to a customer about, how they change the way they develop product, right? And deliver product to their core customers, or, use AI and machine learning and data at scale to unlock, new revenue streams, or change the. I mean, literally, like with CCAI, we're looking at deals where there's hundreds of millions of dollars of savings by showing the improvements you can drive through CCAI and integrated with their core system. So that's exciting that you can actually like over deliver, right? Instead of just try to avoid the under delivery of the business value.
Yeah. We firmly believe that there's never more opportunities to claw out areas for innovation when we're leaning in with the entire story of Google Cloud. And I think it makes that a big differentiator with some of the other competitors that are in the marketplace. So you've had this great career, started off at Accenture, VMware. I love stories where you've both failed and succeeded in different types of startups that builds great character and learn, you learn a lot of lessons, but you finally made that choice at some point to go with Google. How did that come to pass, and what was the thinking behind making that determination, and why did you make the move?
Well, I mean, going back a few years before I joined Google, I remember leaving VMware. I was in Australia because my wife's Australian, actually, and she didn't convince me to go back. I was pretty convinced I wanted to be there as well, and so we moved back 2009, and I realized, wait a sec, what am I going to do here? Once I left VMware, I was like, there's not many global tech companies that are headquartered in Australia, right? I guess Atlassian might have been one option, but I realized, well, there's certainly not a lot of startups I can go work with. So if I stay in Australia, I either go work for a big company like Amazon or Google, or I move back to the Bay Area and I do startups again. So I decided, you know what? I don't want to go to a big company. I'm going to go move back to the Bay Area and do a startup again. And that's when I moved back in 2013 to join Cumulus Networks. And 3 years later, Diane joins Google. She's like, hey, I need someone to help drive revolution in services. And I ended up at Google anyway. So I ended up moving back and joining a big company. And, honestly, besides knowing Diane and the amazing, company she built at VMware, I looked at cloud as the future, and the other two cloud vendors were in Seattle. And I do believe being at headquarters is pretty important when you're trying to help as much as you can, right? And that means you need to be very plugged in with product, with marketing, with sales, with all the other parts of the company. And it's very hard to do that remotely. So I think it was one of the only large clouds that's headquartered down where I live here. And I wasn't willing to move. And obviously, again, Diane had come over. So that's what got me there. And as I mentioned, kind of alluded to earlier, that I think the first TJF I went to, like that first week, it was the DeepMind team presenting AlphaGo. And I was like, wow, AI's gotten big.
Wow.
And that's where it hit me, like all that stuff I learned 20 years ago as an undergrad, I can actually put it to use here, which, to be honest, is overplaying it, because I didn't learn nearly as much when you're hanging around a bunch of PhDs or people that have been doing that for 5, 10 years at Google. You feel very minimal amount of knowledge in terms of comparison to where they are. But I felt very, very blessed and excited to be around these people that were driving, a company that was AI first, AI driven. So that's what got me there. It was really Diane, the being convinced that cloud was the future of, and it's interesting because I think the startups have actually come back, right? I think actually Google's helped them come back in some ways, because back when I joined in 2016, there was really only one player in cloud. It was AWS. Azure was starting to get more credibility, but Google certainly wasn't there. It felt like all the innovation in the enterprise software space was occurring in the cloud. And it felt like if you were going to go do something, you were probably going to get steamrolled by Amazon at some point if you did do something. So it felt like there's just too much dust and noise. So I'm like, yeah, startups are dead for a little while. Interesting enough, they're back in spades, right? I mean, I think partly because multi-cloud's a thing, right? You basically have all the big cloud vendors. One of the analogies I've used in the past is, I see us as big OEMs, right? Back in the mid-tier space, you had, Solar, Sun, and IBM AIX. You had HP UX. You had the big OEMs with their own flavors of Unix, and then you had x86 with IBM, HP, and Dell. Now you got cloud, and I was joking with someone the other day, like I think AWS is Dell because they're an execution engine. They're kind of mostly direct, right? I mean, they do a lot with the channel, but not because they want to.
Right.
Kind of, their roots were more direct, and I think Microsoft is IBM because they've got 30,000 feet on the street. They've got contracts with everybody. Anyone that goes and talks to them says, "Can you do this?" They say, "Absolutely, we can do that." And then they go figure out how to do it with those 30,000 feet on the street. And that leaves Google as HP, right? Which we're the 90s HP though, not the 2010 HP, right? It's back when it was really its core engineering roots. And hopefully we don't end up where ultimately where they did. But I do think we have, one of our strengths is our technology and the technology focus. Obviously, Valley culture, very similar to what HP had. So,
I think it's engineering roots. It's a commitment to innovation. It's having a good understanding of the consumer market and applying that in the enterprise. And I think it's a posture of always in any type of product area, realizing that openness and the freedom of choice has to be part of the play, right? And I think that's unique differentiators across the other public clouds.
I had a thought of the consumer angle. That's actually a great point. That's where they get a lot of their knowledge and roots as well. But you did touch on something I think is different and super important, is open source, right? Google's been committed to open source, and the creators of much of the great open source technologies out there right now, whether it's everything from Kubernetes to TensorFlow and very used to sharing, and that attracts great engineers. In my experience, engineers are motivated mostly by the desire to build something that's going to change the world and do it at scale, and obviously that allows them to share their IP and knowledge in a different kind of way. And so Google's always allowed for that, which is cool.
Yeah, we love that. So you're just coming off your 4-year anniversary with Google. Came in under the Diane regime, and Diane took this business extremely far. Now under TK's leadership, obviously coming from a real strong enterprise, grade background. Generally, how has those 4 years been? How have you seen it evolve? As you reflect back, what are some of the big things that you think about in terms of the change?
Yeah, I mean, tremendous journey. When I got there, literally there was nowhere. Google was a $100 billion company when I joined. There was nowhere inside of that $100 billion company that you can write a statement of work and go deliver a scope of work for a customer and charge them for it. Just couldn't do it, right? In the ads business, most of what they did is tied into these big agreements, these ad agreements, and it's kind of, I won't say best effort because they provide amazing people and solve huge problems, but they're not contracted in an enterprise way where they're committing to a deliverable for a set price for a set amount of time, because it's such a small part of the value, right? It's easy for them to give away those services because of the gross margins on the product side.
Yeah.
And it, in the ads world, people don't engage that way. But enterprise tech, they want a contract, they want a commitment. I literally this story will make you laugh. I think it was the second or third day, I saw someone in the hallway and they said, "Oh, who are you?" And I introduced myself as the head of professional services. And it was a sales rep, and he literally hugged me. So I got a hug. He's like, "Oh my God, we've been waiting so long to do professional services. Like, that's awesome." And it wasn't that we didn't have the talent. We had amazing people there. We just didn't engage the customers in the way they wanted to. We couldn't write contracts, and so we were delivering services in the way the ads team did it for our enterprise customers, which of course didn't work. And so, it took us about 6 months to actually get to where we can write a contract and bill for a service. And so it was into 2016, I think, the first consulting gig we did where we billed for it. And we've just come a tremendous way since then. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of like the roots, like how much we had to build that just didn't exist. So we've come a long way. Thomas has pushed us super hard. I mean, one of the amazing things about watching him in action is because he comes from Oracle, like he understands a way to run a very complex business with many different technologies that are at different altitudes and levels, right? Everything from core infrastructure up to applications. So I think his ability to kind of rally the troops, organize everybody in a way that gets them super focused on the things we need to accomplish, but be clear about that, what our strategy is and how we all work together. It's just been a joy to watch. So, I feel like we just continue to evolve, and he's very focused on the very large enterprise customers in a way that's super exciting. So, we've just doing much bigger deals now that are really working at the CXO level, CEO level to change their business, right? It's not just a line of business or a workload. It's everything from end to end. So, his expectations are super high on making sure that the company knows how to operate in a customer-centric way that is, everyone's, in my experience, has been customer-centric. We all listen to customers. We're excited to help the customers, but we sometimes ignored some of the basics about how you contract, how you price, how you work with partners, how you work with the customer, how you drive product changes, right? So those are the things that he's really brought to the table that have been exciting to watch. And like I said, that's manifesting in much larger deals and higher velocity on kind of everything across the globe.
Yeah. And it's, I think you nailed it in the earlier stages of Google really making strong impact in this ecosystem. It was largely in those companies that were starting out, being very disruptive. They had an idea, they had a vision, they had a greenfield, and they attached themselves to Google because of that like-mindedness, and they drove great innovation. And in fact, I think Google's like a big part in how that's kind of reshaped and reemerged the kind of renaissance of the startups. And it's great being in the Bay Area there, and to be able to influence that. And I think that part of that enterprise journey is there's a new need for the types of professional services when you are up leveling and going into the enterprise at a level of maturity and dedication, scale, depth, and really white glove, boots on the street, helping customers. Because in the enterprise, you're dealing with customers that have, in some cases, not all, but a long legacy of technical debt and a set of problems that are significantly different than those what we call digital natives. And professional services are in fact a key ingredient to making that change.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of the things I was going to point out in terms of the evolution of Google Cloud that a lot of people don't really realize, how come you were not more in the enterprise? It wasn't that long ago that we couldn't sell to 95% of the enterprise, right? So, we had some feature gaps, and one of them was Cloud Interconnect, right? It was probably 2 years ago we rolled out, if you remember, we rolled out Cloud Interconnect, which effectively allowed us to connect our data centers to our customers' data centers without using a VPN. And so I think that was the thing that held us back the most, because we couldn't go after we'd go after a greenfield application with an enterprise customer, but how many of those are there, right? Most of it's brownfield, lift and shift, migrate, and we couldn't go after that because it required a complete network overhaul if you were going to shift your existing apps into GCP, and you couldn't talk to your existing data centers, except through a VPN, which doesn't scale and doesn't work. So that's, I think there were some things missing that prevented us from really going after the enterprise. And then once we filled that gap, obviously we had to win deals, prove our chops. Most people don't want to be the first person, right? They ask, where have you done this before? in my vertical and my geography. So, we spent the last 2 years really developing those reference accounts and proof points that allow us to go compete. And now here we are, like, I was just talking to the team. We have mainframe workloads running now in the cloud. The first set of mainframe workloads we've brought over, and not just brought over from a lift and shift and emulation perspective, but we're actually helping them modernize them and containerize them. And we acquired a company called Cornerstone earlier in the year that allows us to do this in an automated way. So it gets no more enterprise than mainframe, right? And it's just amazing to see that we have these assets, this team that can go address things like that. Whereas 2 years ago, like you said, we were working with a bunch of digital natives doing cool stuff, but it wasn't enterprise, right? The way it is now.
I talked to my team about what makes a great professional services organization. At SADA, we aspire to be the best in our category for providing exceptional professional services. And I know you do too. And, we have a unique relationship between us because we're oftentimes collaborating together and working side by side with you in some of the most strategic accounts that you have across the globe. Those are great experiences for us. I love how the PSO organization has embraced partners in your pursuit of driving outcomes with our mutual customers. It's very different. Like you said, it's a very different model than AWS. It's a very different model than Microsoft, which has a larger aspiration for what they want their, professional services teams to do. I want to thank you because that's been highly appreciative. We've been very appreciative of that. It allows us to bring in people that may have come from other cloud providers, get them certified, get them engaged along with your teams, work in those accounts, and then we can then expand and move further. And we've appreciated that. Do you think that is, something that is intentional? I think it is. Is that something that we could expect to continue to see? Is that in the end good for your customers, right? And why?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I kind of alluded to at the beginning of this, we have cost structures and other areas to invest that will always prevent us from having a large services org. It's not where we want to, spend a quote unquote spend a head count, right? We really want to put it in engineering, building product, or on the sales side, acquiring new customers. Obviously, the thing holding us back often is customers like, no, I want the throat to choke of the vendor, and that's probably the single biggest thing that we have to overcome in making sure that we can transition to the partner model. And I think we're balancing that out between like, hey, you might need us right now for the beginning, but you don't need us for long haul, or you might need us for this new thing you're doing, but you shouldn't need us forever. And our pricing, right? So protecting our, we're super expensive. So, I thought we were expensive at VMware. We were, kind of $3,000 a day. We're $5,000 a day at Google. Yeah. So it's kind of off the charts when it comes to the price. So, you really have to be sure that that's what you want to go do. And that'll protect that somewhat. But, we're always going to be, I think the special forces, right? The people that really have a small fighting force. Maybe it's a bad analogy to be using this day and age, but small fighting force with highly specialized skills. And then we're going to be looking for our partners to really be the army, so to speak, and really stay with that customer for the long haul. And by the way, back to your passion about being the best, I think it really comes down to people. It's what you're selling, people essentially. And one of the things that's really hard in a services org is keeping that bar high, right? Because you're kind of only as good as your weakest link. And one of the nice things about Google is I've never been in a place where it's kind of easier to attract talent. And even at VMware in its heydays, people were like, VMware, what? Where is this all going? Yeah. Versus Google, it has some cachet, but keeping that culture of awesome technical focus, curiosity, constantly learning, but also customer focused, right? We're going to dot your I's, cross your T's, not drop a ball. It's hard to balance those two things out, that strong communication, strong delivery, excellence with deep technical experts. But I think you guys have done that incredibly well. I'd like to think we've done it as well, and then we help each other where we have to, like in
We
certain projects.
we do, and I just even we had talked, I think, earlier in the year, and I had asked, Jason, I need to get connected with a lot of your folks, across the territories. In truth, the last few weeks, me and my teams have been working with almost every one of your PSO leads in almost every one of the territories. And what's fun about it, and something that's so foreign to some of the other cloud providers that I've worked with in my prior past, is that level of transparency. So, it's interesting, and I love when I see my leads in engineering and your leads in PSO, sharing templates, methodologies, scripts that have been automated to do this and that, and we share case studies. It's been wonderful since we've had that conversation back in January, and I think the level of collaboration is like nothing I've ever seen before between a platform pro serve organization and a partner like SADA. So I really appreciate the leadership there. Really appreciate the leadership there.
Some of it's culture, some of it's technology, and you pinged me earlier in the week, you're on the Hangouts, boom, you pop up my Hangouts. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Here we are.
I love that.
Here we are recording it and meet, right? You guys are, it's like you're part of Google, right? And the technology lends itself to that. And certainly the culture at Google does. That's the part I've been blown away by when I joined. You hear all this stuff externally, and, I got there, I was like, oh, all the stuff you're outside is actually true, and then some, right? People just really share information. The tools allow for that. The culture allows for that, whether it's cross geography, cross organizational boundaries. Now as you're saying, cross company boundaries, right? So that's cool. I think it's critical because that's, our speed of innovation is somewhat dependent on our ability to communicate and mash our knowledge together, right? And evolve it rapidly together. That's where innovation occurs, is people coming together and, riffing on each other essentially. And that's, I think that's where we're at, right?
So obviously, we're all dealing with the new world reality right now with respect to the pandemic and the changes in how we can provide, that same level of great service to our joint customers. We've loved the general posture of Google and of course us, which has always been, we're going to serve during this time rather than sell, which has been inspiring and I think is the right tone. And there's nothing more, in my view, that is a demonstrable act of that than continuing with great professional services in making sure that the projects and initiatives and the things that our customers need to still get done still happen. And they have to happen. But of course, we're not on site with our customers as much as we are. We've started to talk about when that might be, and we don't know. We're trying to change some things in terms of trying to provide that same level of great service. How have you guys dealt with that, and what are you doing to continue to deal with that? What are your plans?
Yeah, well, first let me say I've been super proud of the team because much as we talked about, the collaboration, sharing cross borders, APAC had hit this first for us, and then obviously, me and US closely followed behind that. Was everyone got together and figured out, how do we evolve our tool sets and methodologies to do 100% remote. And, we had good skills in that because we do a lot remote with the technology. And even if you're on site, there's always people on the project team that are remote anyway. But I was super proud that first big project we did with, it was like 70 people involved for British Telecom. We kicked off and it was 100% remote. And the CSAT we got on that engagement was super high. And it was like, oh, that's great to see. The teams really rallied around solving this problem and providing better assets. So we continue to invest in the assets. And I think the second thing that I was really excited to see was, as you said, just serving the community and our customers in a way that was needed, right? The one that I think it made certainly made Governor Cuomo's talk track, but I think Sundar talked about it as well in an earnings call, was the work we did to help the state of New York on their unemployment site. And that my team was involved. It wasn't only my team. We had some engineers, we had DevRel and some other parts of the org really rallied it to fix their front end application while we were continuing to fix their back end mainframe. And so, that got, people stayed up 24 hours, 48 hours to solve it. And they did, and they got it solved, and we launched on time. And, because Governor Cuomo had committed to be live at 9 a.m. the next day, and we figured it out and got it done. And that couldn't have been done without the people. B, it couldn't have been done without the cloud technologies we had, right? Firebase and our back-end data stores and systems and our CI/CD pipelines and all that to help us build this. But it also, it was just people were passionate about helping, and that was cool to see. So, that continues across a bunch of areas. There's stories in Spain and APAC as well. So it's not just here in the US, but I think the other thing I noticed was how in the US, at least, we didn't miss a beat, right? There was, in some ways, COVID was an accelerant for cloud because people are looking to do things differently quickly. Also, let's think about it. If you I was looking at a list of customers the other day, and it was for a different presentation, but I looked at it, I'm like, what's funny about this list of customers? Half of them did really well out of COVID. Their businesses are booming. There's retailers, media companies. And I'm like, the other half, travel sector, didn't do well. But guess what? Both of them were saved by the cloud.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the cloud and the business shrinks, well, guess what? You now don't have that fixed capital asset you're paying for. Or if you're in the cloud and it booms, you can elastically grow. We had customers that were growing 30, 40x in a week, right? Some of our online retailers, they had bigger traffic than they did during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So it was suddenly out of nowhere, we had a Black Friday, Cyber Monday event to deal with for retailers. And they all enabled by cloud, and the people behind it support it. So that was kind of cool to see.
Sundar even announced in the press release, just launching in collaboration with Google and some of our healthcare partners, a COVID-19 emergency response portal that integrates all the best data from the best healthcare providers in the world, and supported and powered by Google Cloud and Looker and other things. And it's inspiring when we can start to do some of those things that are meaningful, impactful to the world. But then you're right. We've equally seen that a lot of these organizations right now are using this, horrible crisis as an opportunity to, get through it and get through it faster. Somewhat absorb some of the downfall that they're going through, and others are continuing to innovate, and that's, it's great. We're both very blessed to be in the business that we're in, and it's wonderful to be able to kind of transfer that to our customers. I know that Google was in my book kind of one of those progressive companies that's trying to build something special. We at SADA, I always like to say we're trying to build the kind of company that we've always loved to work for, or wanted to work for. We learn a lot from the great precedent that's been set by Google. And Jason, I just want to thank you. I continue to value our special partnership and our friendship very, very much. And I reserve the right to continue to bug you and ask you questions so I can learn from you. I can only aspire one day that when I walk through the halls of SADA, that the new hires come up to me and hug me and thank me for starting and building a professional services company like they did with you on your first week. I'm gonna talk to my people to see if someone might do that. But
I would give you a hug if I was there, Dana.
Thank you, buddy. I'll give you a hug too.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you having me on, and tell Tony when Pac-12 football starts up, I'll have to get down there for the next USC Stanford game. It's always a crazy one. So
I'll bring it down, and I'll buy all your USC gear that you're gonna have to wear. That's the one condition.
I think I mentioned last time my niece plays soccer for them now, so I can't be too harsh on them. But hopefully all the college athletes and the rest of us can get back to actually living life how we're used to. But it was great to catch up with you. Thanks for having me on. Super excited about our partnership and continued closeness as we hit the next big challenges and opportunities, because it just keeps evolving and everything just keeps getting bigger, which is just awesome. So thank you for all you do to help us continue to grow the business and support you and keep you honest. So, or keep us honest. So keep us honest. Ask for anything. Happy to help. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason Martin.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @CloudandClear and our website, SADA.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.